Have you ever tried so hard to succeed that the harder you tried, the worse you performed? Not because you weren't capable, not because you lacked discipline, but because something inside you tightened the moment it mattered most. There was once a young archer who could split a falling leaf in half when no one was watching. In the quiet forest behind his village, surrounded by nothing but wind and bird song, his arrows flew with instinctive precision. His breathing was steady. His body moved naturally. The arrow would leave the string almost effortlessly, as if guided by something deeper than conscious effort. But the moment people gathered behind him, everything changed. And what his master eventually revealed to him was not about archery at all. It was about the invisible pressure that ruins more lives than failure ever could. The young archer was born in a mountain village where skill meant honor. Archery was not just sport, it was identity. The village held seasonal competitions, and young warriors were judged not only by their accuracy, but by their composure. A steady hand under pressure was considered a sign of inner strength. From childhood, the young archer trained with relentless focus. While others rested, he practiced. While others socialized, he aimed at smaller and smaller targets. His discipline earned quiet admiration. In private, he was extraordinary. But the first time he stepped into the village square to compete, something unfamiliar crept into his body. The crowd gathered in a circle. The targets were placed at a distance he had mastered countless times before. When his name was called, he stepped forward with confidence. He drew the bow. But this time, instead of hearing birds in the trees, he heard breathing behind him. Instead of feeling wind against his skin, he felt expectation pressing against his back. Instead of sensing calm, he felt judgment. His mind whispered, "Don't miss." He released. The arrow struck just outside the center. A quiet murmur rippled through the crowd. It was subtle. No one mocked him, but something shifted. He felt it. The second arrow missed wider. The third barely grazed the edge. When the competition ended, he walked home in silence. That night, he returned to the forest and shot arrow after arrow in the darkness until his fingers bled. The next morning in solitude, he hit the center again. And that was the torture. He could do it, just not when it mattered. The next competition was worse. This time, the crowd expected something. They expected redemption. They expected him to prove the first failure was a fluke. As he stepped forward, he could feel their hope, their doubt, their curiosity. His hands trembled slightly as he drew the string back. Focus harder, aim tighter, force control, release, miss. The murmur was louder this time. And in that moment, something dangerous happened. The bullseye stopped being a target. It became validation. It became worth. It became proof. He began to believe that if he did not hit the center, he would be exposed as mediocre. And that belief began to poison his training. He started staring at the red circle obsessively. He imagined it constantly. He visualized applause. He rehearsed victory in his mind. But every time he fixated on the result, his body stiffened. His shoulders rose. His breath shortened. His fingers tightened too sharply on the string, and the arrow would veer just enough to hurt. Days turned into weeks. His private accuracy began to slip too. Even alone, he felt watched. Even in silence, he felt evaluated. The forest no longer felt safe. It felt like rehearsal for judgment. One evening, long after sunset, as he practiced alone again, his master approached him. The old man had observed everything quietly for months. He did not rush to correct technique. He waited for patterns. "You are fighting the target," the master said. The young archer turned, frustration spilling from him. I am trying to hit it. That is why you miss, the master replied calmly. The young man felt anger flare. If I do not try, I will fail. The master stepped forward and placed a hand gently over the bullseye. You are not missing because you lack skill, he said. You are missing because you are afraid. The word pierced deeper than any arrow. Afraid. I am not afraid, the young man insisted. You are afraid of missing, the master clarified. Afraid of what people will think. Afraid that your worth depends on the center. Silence stretched between them. The young archer realized something uncomfortable. The master was right. The target was no longer wood and paint. It was approval. The next morning, the master gave him an instruction that seemed absurd. For 30 days, he said, you will not aim at the bullseye. The young man's jaw tightened. Then what will I aim at? Your breath. The training changed. Before drawing the bow, he had to close his eyes and inhale deeply. He had to feel the ground under his feet. He had to notice the wind against his cheek. The release was not allowed until his body felt balanced. The first week was chaotic. His mind screamed for results. Where did it land? Was it closer? Is it improving? Each time those thoughts surged, his body stiffened. Each time he tightened, the arrow drifted. The master said nothing. On the 10th day, something shifted. He released an arrow without urgency. He did not think about impressing anyone. He did not calculate improvement. He simply felt the movement. The arrow struck near the center, but the master did not allow him to check. On the 15th day, he felt something new. Space. A small, quiet gap between thought and action. In that space, there was no desperation, only presence. On the 20th day, the master covered the bullseye with a cloth. Now, he said, shoot. The young archer stood still. No red circle, no visual fixation, only breath, only wind, only movement. He drew the string back slowly. Not to conquer, not to prove, not to validate. He released. The sound of impact echoed through the clearing. The master walked forward and lifted the cloth. The arrow had struck the exact center. The young archer felt no explosion of joy, no rush of relief, only calm, because he finally understood something that would change the rest of his life. The more tightly you grip the outcome, the more you interfere with the process. The next public competition arrived. The same crowd gathered. The same whispers lingered. But this time, as he stepped forward, he did not stare at the red circle like a starving man staring at food. He softened his gaze. He inhaled slowly. He let the world exist without trying to dominate it. He drew. He released. The arrow struck the center. The applause was loud. But inside him, there was no desperation to hear it. Because he had discovered detachment. And here's the part most people never realize. The lesson was never about archery. It was about life. We all have bullseyes, career milestones, relationship timelines, financial goals, recognition. We stare at them so intensely that they begin to control us. We convince ourselves that hitting them will finally prove something about who we are. And the harder we chase them, the more anxious we become. The more anxious we become, the tighter we grip. The tighter we grip, the more we miss. Not because we lack ability, but because we have replaced presence with pressure. The silent archer discovered that mastery does not come from obsession. It comes from release. You do the work fully. You commit to the process completely, but you loosen your grip on the result. And paradoxically, That is when results begin to appear. So ask yourself honestly, what target have you been staring at so intensely that it has started staring back at you? What outcome have you tied to your identity? What are you gripping so tightly that your hands have forgotten how to release? Sometimes the breakthrough you are waiting for will not arrive when you push harder. It will arrive when you breathe, when you soften, when you detach. Because the arrow flies best when the hand is steady, and the hand is steady only when the mind is quiet. That was the secret of the silent archer, and it might just be the secret you've been missing.